makers in terms of steering that sense of framing of a space.
But that's interesting as well, because both of you have been contributors, or kind of like leading on two of those, or not necessarily leading, I don't know if you'd say that, but you're part of it as well as the starting point, so could then have an input into, as you were going to be users. So that's quite interesting as well to think about that. Is it possible to just briefly, because I'm going to talk to Charlie later, briefly, or actually both of you, just talk about, once you've done that, how did it work for you in terms of using allotments?
In terms of the associate producer role and using allotment, it was really bizarre actually, because going back to kind of Keith's identity, when we did the very first install, none of that was up yet, none of that kind of branding. So it felt you couldn't really understand the physicality of it, and you didn't know if it was going to work, and there was that moment of doubt. And then as soon as Keith's work went up, it all just felt really grounded and solid, and you could see it actually evolving. And the placement of where the plots were going to open, they didn't, you know, we purposefully decided that it wasn't going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way around, that it needed to feel organic. And actually through that there's been really interesting conversations through plot holder neighbours and kind of similar ideas developing in stories that you can kind of make between them in associations. So it's been a really interesting learning curve, thinking about actually managing several different groups, thinking about how they will relate to each other, almost trying to preempt but not predict what kind of work they'll do, how they might work together or work against each other.
Can I just throw it straight? It's probably too early for anyone to even have a question or even formulate a question, but because we're really tight on time, I'm going to kind of call a halt on that. And are there any questions about that initial setting up and premise that you might have for any or all of our folks that are squodged on that bench?
I suppose I am curious about the decision.
Can I just give you that moment, because we're recording it?
I am curious about the decision as to whom actually the shortlist as such, you know, who you actually decided to invite in the end. And it does seem to represent lots of different kinds of groups or individuals with very different kinds of agenda, which I think is a positive thing. But I just wondered, was that something that you were thinking of when you were making that decision? Were you thinking about kind of showing such an eclectic range of producers, let's say?
What was really nice, and kind of coming to this as someone who's, I think I know where I like to be curatorially in terms of Trove, so being invited onto this project to work with new people that I admire or people whose practice felt quite exciting, and then sort of we literally sort of had names on the table, looked through, and that was a real decision we made together. But no, we were thinking about who would actually really take the opportunity and run with it, and who'd excel at it. And also in terms of Mac kind of getting to know other people in the city that are doing things that potential partnerships for them could then grow out of as well, rather than just the plot holders working together. It's here, it's at the Mac, it's these guys should be knowing what's going on. So for me, that was really important, and these two backed that decision all the way.
At a very practical level, it's quite warm in here, so I'm going to kind of watch this open. If the sound is worse than the nice bit of breeze, just let me know and I'll close it. Was there another question over was, Jeanette? Just say who you are as well before you question, please.
Hi, my name's Jeanette Bushell. Tonight I'm here with my Moonbeams hat on, but I do wear other hats. I just wondered, wall space in any art centre or gallery is really valuable and sought after, sometimes fought after. How did you manage to say, this is what we want to do? And do you know of any other art centres or galleries that have had that similar kind of approach to breaking up the space and having a much more democratic approach, if you like?
I mean, I think one of the kind of inspirations to this programme was a programme that they run in Chicago called 12 by 12, which on a monthly basis introduces artists to an audience, and seems to kind of within it kind of have some of those kind of open approaches to working with a broad public. But I'm not sure about actually breaking the space in that way. It certainly felt quite a new kind of fresh approach, but I imagine it has been attempted before. In fact, I think there is a programme called Allotments somewhere else, but I don't know much about it. But this was very much about about working with those kind of almost restrictions, that there is a space and we're kind of we need to keep actively programming it, but they're generally just one show at a time for 9 weeks. There's a static kind of sense to that going in place when there's so many people passing through the building. So that approach to kind of open it up to 10 different perspectives at any one time, and a very considered, staggered approach to the plots changing, as much to do with technical resource that was required to support that changeover as anything, was I think important to what the programme did. But I'm not sure. I think there's other art centres that kind of sell space, if you like. You know, they kind of rent it out, but I'm not keen on that idea actually of just earning income through that, because fundamentally there is an issue of quality there, and kind of maintaining some kind of focus on the quality and what the space does.
And I think in terms of that continuation of, you know, allowing to open up that wall space from an institutional point of view, I think I'd come back to Antiquariate as really being the start of that. You know, it was going to be called We Are Open at one point. I think really to kind of articulate in the kind of literalist form. But I think that kind of spirit continued through allotment, because I think underlying this, I think Craig touched on it, there is that really strong ethos of multiple voices that we really try and incorporate in a lot of work that we do. So I think the allotment really was an embodiment of that in its kind of physical and literal senses.
Taking time as our major kind of dimension here, as opposed to space and physicality, that this is an ongoing kind of project in that respect. So the exhibition, I always thought of Antiquariate as a project, not an exhibition. It was a project that was a series of exhibitions. It wasn't about making an exhibition per se. But I'm going to thank you, but before you leave, I've got two marvellous round prizes. So if you want to pull one out for me, get your tickets out. There was a bit of a, am I allowed to say balls up? There was a bit of a balls up at the beginning, so we might pull out tickets that aren't there. But have you got one? Have you got one?
Yeah.
So, okay.